Good evening. It's very thrilling indeed to come here again to see so many friendly faces that we know so well. It really is a pleasure. But brethren and sisters, we come at a time which is very significant indeed, as we've said before. We live at a time when things are really moving, and I'm sure every one of you knows that. But let's have a look at some of the things that have been happening more recently on the world scene. But let's come back first of all to that quote that we've got before us. Look what it says to us, brethren and sisters. It says to us, we know the times and seasons. I don't have to write and tell you that. Yourselves know it perfectly, that the day the Lord comes at a time when most people don't think, when they're not prepared, when they're saying peace and safety. Now remember that, because we're going to see that tonight. Then sudden destruction cometh on them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So let's look particularly at those first few verses for a moment. What we want to look at is the words times and seasons. What we want to look at first of all is the time. The word time is the Hebrew word or Greek word chronos, from which we get chronology. It's the duration, the length of the period. And so indeed, let's remind ourselves what we looked at last year. Times and seasons reconsidered, said Islip Collier way back in the Second World War. Russia and Germany had joined together, Rosh, Meshach and Tubal and Magog. And he said, they thought, was this going to be the return of the Lord Jesus Christ? And they wrote to Brother Islip Collier in the Christadelphian and asked him, and he said, no, it won't be. But he said, I'll tell you what, it's unwise for us to take too much from dates, but there's so many dates in Scripture that it's important that we understand it. It's still worse than error, says he, to be indifferent. So the question is, how long? And the date that he gave when the next consequential event would take place, and he didn't say what it was, because it could be Christ's return, but it doesn't fit. It means that because Christ comes at a time when you think not, at a time you don't know. So what is it? We don't know, but it's consequential. He said the next date of consequence is this year. Now, how did he get that? Well, he got it from Daniel chapter 7. You could turn it up if you wanted to, but it's all there. We know it very well. Daniel 7 parallels Daniel 2, doesn't it? But there is one or two things that are added, and here's one of them. The 10 horns, like the 10 toes. Here's the European area. Will be divided up into 10. And that took place when the Huns, the Vandals, the Visigoths, the Burgundians, the Barbarians moved in and carved up Europe into the 10, didn't it? Then he said, Daniel said, there shall rise another king. Whoops, I've gone and done the wrong thing. Let me get used to this. Another shall arise, which will subdue 3 kings, 3 of those horns, 3 of those kings, and it will give it to one who speaks great words against the Most High. Now he said that will last for a time, times and a dividing of times. Well, when did that happen? Well, barbarians came into Europe around about 395 AD, carved it into its 10. But then subsequently, 3 of those horns were plucked up. The ones that were in the Italian peninsula, the Vandals, the Lombards and the Huns. So here they are, part of that beast with the 10 horns. They were plucked up by this man, Pepin the Short, the father of Charlemagne. And what he did was, he gave it to the papacy. He actually, I think, decided that he wanted to go to heaven when he died, or something like that. Thought that if he gave them a present, then that would be possible. So he gave it to them in 754, but it didn't last. He had to come back the next year, 755, 756, and he completed the job and gave it to the various popes, but the pope at that time. And they believed that the 3 might parts, or the 3 ridges on the crowns of the pope, represents those 3 papal states that were given. And so when did it happen? Well, dominantly they got control of those papal states 755. At 1260, when do you get? You get this year. So 755 754 to 756, Pepin the Short gave what was called Pepin's donation to the papacy. So what's going to happen? We don't know. Here's a suggestion. Look, brethren and sisters, add that period to there, we come to there. We're in a significant area. We should have seen something moving this last year, and it did. Russia began to move, didn't it? So it looks like it's right. So what should we expect? Well, it was given to that papal horn. A horn is a political power that rules territories or powers. Does the Pope do that now? Look at this. He still rules. There he is. These people here are all Jesuits. They are priests which do not have the Jesuit or the priestly garments normally. Here is the leader of the EU. This man runs the bank of the EU. This man's been replaced by this man, Mr. Juncker, who runs the Club of Europe, all the countries of Europe. And here's the Prime Minister of Spain. And previously was a lady, Baron Ashton. She stood down, a British person, and the Catholics now taken over. There she is, Federica, whatever. But there is the people that run Europe today. They are subject to the papacy. But the suggestion is that that could come to an end next year, or this year, who knows? We'll see. But now let's come to the next point. What makes this so interesting is, yes, the date seems to work. And there are many other dates. Next year is exactly a jubilee from the Six-Day War. There was a jubilee from the formation, the Balfour Declaration, to the State of Israel, from the State of Israel to the Six-Day War. All of it seems to fit together, doesn't it? And here we are, a jubilee from the Six-Day War next year. What's it going to bring? But now let's look at this word here, seasons. Seasons, that word there speaks of the characteristic of a period. So if it's winter, it's cold. That's the characteristic of it, isn't it? What are we to look for? Signs of the season we're in. Signs of Christ's return. So that's what we're going to look at now. Because the two work together, I do think that we are at a point where it is very, very critical period. Very critical indeed. But let's go back a little bit, and we're going to work predominantly just from key ideas from Ezekiel 38. For those who don't know it quite so well, Ezekiel 38 speaks of the Jews in the land in the latter days. Clearly our time. Clearly now. But it goes on to say in that middle verse, notice, that there will come a power out of the north, from the uttermost parts of the north, a mighty army. So here's an invasion of the Middle East when the Jews are there. Who's this power from the north? Well, it's clearly Russia. Go from where Ezekiel lived, or wherever that prophecy possibly began, and you go due north from Israel, and you go through Russia. Go any further north, you get to the North Pole, and then it's all south. It's got to be Russia. Got to be Russia. The uttermost parts of the north. And of course we know in the very first verse of Ezekiel 38, it speaks of the prince of Rosh, Meshech and Tubal. Who's that power? Take Rosh alone and go to the lexicon, the leading lexicon of the Hebrew Bible, Gesenius, and he's talking about Ezekiel 38 and 39 where the term's used. And what does he say? Undoubtedly the Russians. Undoubtedly the Russians. So what have we got to see? We've got to see Russia take control of Europe. Russia today in those territories take Ukraine, Magog, Central Europe and Western Europe. It's got to take control of that area. Do we see that on the way now? Certainly Russia has begun to move, hasn't it? It began to move last year in no uncertain terms. What did Brother Thomas say to us? He said, when Russia makes its grand move out of our title, he said, for us, let us, the reader, then know that the end of all things is at hand. The long expected but stealthy advent of Christ, the King of Israel, will be on the eve of becoming a fact. It's thrilling, it's exciting. The time is short. Now you've all seen this before, but here's the picture of Europe. And what we expect, don't we, is the future movements of Russia are notable signs of the times, said Dr. Thomas, back there in 1848. So we're expecting Russia to control Turkey, move in, Ukraine, move in to control Eastern Europe, which is what we're going to dominantly look at tonight. Then move into Turkey and south to Israel. More on that will be dealt with in the next talk. But now, Russia's movements. Let's look over the last 100 years, from 1917 to now. We'll do that very briefly. But here it was. From World War I to World War II, in the latter part of World War II, she began to move. She moved in and took up this area which became the Warsaw Pact countries and set up the Iron Curtain so people couldn't go in or out. But then the Bible said, I'll turn thee back. I'll turn thee back. Is that what happened? Is that what happened? Of course it is. 1989, 1991, over those years, Russia became utterly bankrupt because of the low price of oil. And she was forced to retreat, and so there she is today. There she is what she was after 1991 when the Iron Curtain came down. And you know, we've just celebrated that, well, the world has, 25 years from November 1989 when the Iron Curtain came down in Berlin, or the wall was breached. There it is. And the troops moved back out because they couldn't afford to keep them there. They were too bankrupt. And they moved back out. But what the scripture says then, I'll put hooks in thy jaws, something's going to entice her forward, and I'll bring thee forth. And so there we are. And Russia has been moving. Crimea, March the 25th. Then into Ukraine. She's been on the way. And in that interim period, what has she been doing? Leading from 1991 through to now, hibernating. Hibernating. But she's not hibernating anymore. She's on the move. She's moving to control Ukraine. And she is certainly doing so in a brutal fashion. Brutal to say the least. Here she's moving. Whoops, I don't know why that did that. There we are, better. Here she's moving against Ukraine. And here's Mr. Obama. The world sees Mr. Obama as just mildly clipping his nails, achieving little. That's how we see it too. She doesn't see... America, where is she? Hardly doing anything about it. Again, look at this. Here's how the world sees it. Mr. Putin. And here's the sanctions from the US and EU. Not doing much. Not doing much. Ridiculous. We've got our weapons like heck. And so Russia has been moving. She moved first of all into Georgia, 2008, parts of Georgia, took control of that. Then she moved in to destabilise Moldavia, or the area of Transnistria. Then she moved into Crimea, March last year. And then September, more particularly, she moved in on eastern Ukraine, and it's much bigger than that she controls now. But where is things going now? This is what we want to look at. Her army is attacking Ukraine, yes. She's exercising her troops on Europe's borders. She's threatening a nuclear response. She's stating she could and will take East Europe. And she has invaded Europe's waters and airspace. She's moving in an intimidating and terrifying manner against Eastern Europe. That's just what we would expect, wouldn't it? That she's going to control these areas. Daniel 2 tells us that. Ezekiel 38 confirms that. And she's got to control certainly Eastern Europe and be aligned or occupy Western Europe. So the image stands, East and West is established. And Russia has been moving this year, moving in a grand fashion into Ukraine. Oh, she says, we're not really doing that. We're sending aid, humanitarian aid. Huge convoy of 260 trucks came to the border. Somebody got on board those trucks, found nothing much in them. Then overnight they shifted at another spot in the border. Next morning the next spot. And next morning they were in Ukraine. And when they were seen going in, they certainly weren't as lightly loaded as this. They were heavily loaded. Somewhere along the line they loaded something aboard it. Probably soldiers, probably equipment. And now, as we'll see a little later on, 11 convoys have gone in. 11 convoys have gone in. And tanks are moving in no uncertain terms, into Eastern Europe. So, things paused for a minute. Mr. Putin came to the G8 meeting, or G10 or whatever it is, over in Brisbane. But afterwards, as soon as he came home, Eastern Ukraine on the verge of full-scale conflict again. 32 tanks, 16 guns, and more equipment moved in. And everybody said, back off. Back off. Just calm it down. This is a situation leading to war. And what was his response? Don't mess with us. We have nuclear equipment. We are nuclear armed. He raised the sceptre of nuclear war with the West. Don't mess with us. In which the TV in Russia came out with broadcasts saying to America, back off or we'll turn you to nuclear dust. So very threatening words came through. And now, come to the last few months, November. International business paper here in Australia. Vladimir plotting to invade Europe. What we would expect. Putin has a concrete plan to invade Europe. And how far does he want to go? In Europe, Putin's plans of having a sphere of influence across the continent all the way to Portugal. Daniel's image. It's coming together, brethren and sisters. The threat is there. He says, just to terrify people, I can get into 5 countries in 2 days. Here's the capitals I can get to. I can have my troops in your capital. Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne. Of course, not here, but we know. Imagine if we were worried by that. Imagine the impact it would have upon our minds and thoughts. And that's what he was saying. Here we can see, September last year. If I wanted, Russian troops could be in Kyiv, Warsaw, Bucharest, just in 2 days. Amazing. Terrifying. So what's the response of the West? What have they said? This is what they said. We'll cut you out of the banking network. We'll cut you out of the banking network. Apparently, in Belgium, there is a centre where computers are run, where many of the European transactions in banking between banks, not our bank cards or anything like that, but the big bank transactions are run from this centre here. Presumably it's backed up somewhere else, but be that as it may, the Western powers and Europe have been saying to Russia, back off, or we'll stop your using of that money, the banking network. And Medvedev, the Prime Minister, had a response. Russian Prime Minister. What did he say? If there is no SWIFT, that's the name of this banking network, if there's no SWIFT, there is no banking. It means that the country's on the verge of war. Do that to us, and it's war. Or they are definitely in a Cold War. I want you to note that our reaction will be without limits. Without limits. And so she has been moving. Now let's come back to Ukraine for a moment. The area they're now attacking is that part where I'll put the couple of arrows on there. Look at the date. Here's Stratfor. And what does it say? Red alert update at the heart of Mariupol crisis. They are saying they're expecting war big time in the area of Ukraine. All the indicators are that way. And we know Stratfor is a professional reporting paper for people who want to pay for it throughout the world. And they are saying, yes, Mariupol. Stratfor is continuing our red alert, prepared to launch an offensive to secure its hold on the Crimean Peninsula. Ukraine is not in a position to go on the offensive. They can't do much about it. They're calling up troops frantically in Ukraine, or people, men, who aren't even trained as soldiers, calling them up frantically to try and increase the army because they're in a terrible state. Red alert in Ukraine. But it doesn't stop there. Look, here's the global research. War on a global scale is the threat. We're looking at World War II appears inevitable. It's difficult not to see a war on a global scale fast approaching. All the signs are here. This is not my words, brethren and sisters. These are the papers. And these are consequential papers that are reporting this. All right? Here we can see another man giving a comment on. Go and ask the Russians. Mikhail Gorbachev came over to the West and he said, he warns of Russian nuclear war over Ukraine a few days ago. Okay, Ukraine crisis could transform into World War III, he said. And he said, we're likely, if we can't accomplish our purpose, to launch a nuclear war. That's the way of Putin, he said. Be careful. Already, he said, 4,000 had died in Ukraine, 9,000 have been wounded. Back off. In other words, let us take over. And they're attempting to get that message across to everybody in Europe. Look at this. This happened only a few days ago. Towards Heathrow Airport came this, along with another one, without its transponders on to tell other aircraft that was in the zone. Came in and they had to delay, divert planes all over the place, so at Heathrow they couldn't land. What was it? It was a Russian bomber. And here's another fighter, I think that was a British one, went up to try and force it out of the airspace. RAF warplanes scrambled to intercept Russian bombers. More than 100 Russian aircraft were intercepted last year, and I believe that's Britain. 3 times more than during the whole of 2013. So once every 3 days at least, Russian bombers heading towards Britain. But it's not only that number, look at this. 400 scrambled in Europe. Finland feeling vulnerable amid Russian provocations. The bear is provoking Finland repeatedly, guiding military planes into Finnish airspace. But that number is not just Finland, that's the European area. And it's not only planes, it's ships. A pattern of aggressive Russian behaviour that has radiated across Europe. Look at what we're seeing. Now, brothers and sisters, this is what we've expected from long ago. And indeed, it's not only planes, ships. Russian Navy ships conduct drill in the English Channel. So they sailed out of here and came down the English Channel with their guns. Here they are. Russian Northern Fleet enters the English Channel to hold naval exercises off the coast of Britain. Why not hold it out here? Because you don't intimidate Britain. Trying to bring home to them, back off, we can take control of you. And indeed, Eastern Europe is terrified. Look at this. Here's the figures. The most recent figures, Eastern European armies outnumbered. There's the value, the number of troops these countries have got. And I might add, as I said to you, some countries are even calling them up now, people who are only partially trained. Poland is calling home people from Britain who've gone over to Britain for work, young people, and they're Polish. They've been trained, had a couple of months training in the army, they're calling them home. They're worried. 7,000 extra were called up by Poland in the last few days. Put it together, they've got half as number of troops pretty well, roughly, as Russia. About a quarter of the number of tanks, combined that is. About a quarter of the number of aircraft, combined. Didn't used to be like that, but they thought they had peace. And they've been deceived. Isn't that what we've expected? By peace, he should deceive many. And it's not stopping there. Poles are calling up extras, so's the Russians. So's the Russians. Where are they going to get their extras from? Eastern Europe. The invitation is, hey, if you can speak Russian, in other words, you probably came from a Russian origin, and you're in the age of 18 to 30, and you speak Russian, you can join the Russian army now and we'll pay you. Oh, you live in Lithuania or Latvia? Doesn't matter. So in other words, they're stimulating provocation within those countries. What happened in eastern Ukraine? Rebels stood up, didn't they, and fought the Ukrainians at the start. They were Ukrainians, but they probably spoke Russian too. They're saying do the same right across Eastern Europe. And so, at the expense of former Soviet republics, these young people are being enlisted. And so they're poaching, so to speak, on these countries, trying to get those people to say to themselves, oh, I could get paid, it's not much, but you get paid. Or alternatively, if Russia occupies, I'm on the right side. That's the way they might think. And so there we are, we can see things are moving, and it's terrifying people. Let's look at Sweden for a minute. Over the last 2 weeks, Sweden's noticed something like a periscope going through some of their waters. 3 times 2 weeks ago, 3 objects 2 weeks ago, and 1 object last week. So, remember they shrunk their navy by about 60%. Oh, it says it here, sorry. Take Sweden. The army's reduced by 90%, the navy scaled back by 80%, the air force by 70%. Are they prepared? No. So they sent one of their modern ships out and said, tell us what that sub is down there. They couldn't tell. They didn't know where it came from. They didn't have the equipment on board. So last week, the Swedes spoke to the British. The British flew a plane over. Said, yeah, there it is, there it is. They are Russian ones. They had the equipment on board. In other words, they haven't, it looks pretty modern, but it isn't that modern. It isn't up to date with what's going on. They're ill-equipped to go to war. Ill-equipped to force Russia out. But what about America? What about NATO? NATO to deploy small units in 6 Eastern European nations. Small units in 6 of those countries. There they are. A lot of good that will be. But now, let's go aside from that for a minute. Problems are rising in another way. Problems with the Muslims. Paris terror attacks. 2 million rally as Europe braces for a new terror. Here we can see in Paris huge numbers of those terrorist activities. We're not going into that. We don't want to. But look what they've done. These people have rallied, and across France, 3.7 million rallied to say to the Muslims, back it off, stop it. Not doing a lot of good. And so on the streets of Paris and various different countries across cities in France, they've got soldiers, over 10,000 soldiers. And they're doing the same in Belgium and other places where terrorism is taking place. What's the situation? French armies, oh, it's quite big, but it's completely overstretched. Soldiers are deployed in Africa, and we cannot permanently have 10,000 soldiers on the streets like there are now. We need them to face Russia, but no, we need them to look after at home. So no matter which way you look at it, they're in trouble. They haven't kept upmarket with the problems, with the weaponry needed, and they haven't got the numbers. And they've got problems at home which they can't control. And Russia's not leaving it there. Early last year, Russia deployed troops near the Polish-Lithuanian border. How could they get there? Well, here's Lithuania. See that red bit there? That's a country called Kaliningrad. On most maps it's just called Russia because they can't fit Kaliningrad in. Such a tiny little place. But when the Iron Curtain came down in 1991, that was the only part of Europe that didn't gain independence or didn't seek for it. It stayed Russian. So it's still controlled by Russia today. So what's Russia been doing? Oh, early last year they moved 3,500 troops in there. Not only did they do that, they have subsequently been moving long-range missiles, well, not that long, but long-range insofar as capable of carrying those ranges nuclear weapons into Kaliningrad. So they had the manoeuvres there last year when they had about 350 hardware, tanks, and so forth in that area. But since then, They've upgraded it to 9,000 troops. And not only that, more tanks, 3,500 I think it is, and as well as that, 55 ships off the coast of Kaliningrad. Here it is, border Poland, border Lithuania, border Latvia. You'd be pretty worried, wouldn't you, if you lived there? You'd be saying to your government, maybe, back off and be friendly with Russia. We don't really want to go to war, do we? And I believe that's where Russia is trying to aim at this stage. And so it's continuing. Russian forces exercise in the Baltic after Lithuania publishes a manual. More on that in a second. Look at the date. Russia deploys troops near Polish and Lithuanian border. The entire Baltic fleet, as well as air and land forces, will conduct drills this weekend. That's only a little while ago, a few days ago. So what are you doing? What's Lithuania going to do? Well, they've done something. Here's what they've done. They've produced a book. Russian Invasion Survival Manual, to be issued, and it should be coming out in the next few days, to citizens in the EU, but first of all to Lithuania. A book of 98 pages of what to do when Russia takes over. And what are they telling them to do? They're saying now, buy food, you'll need it, and hide it. Buy your medicine, get a couple of repeats and put it away if you need it. It's pretty frightening. In that book it shows them routes they can drive to get into another country if Russia occupies, ship routes that they can get through to get out, if they can do it. And then finally they say, well, if you can't, gunshots outside your house, windows are not outside your window, it's not the end of the world, be calm. And telling them what to do. And it appears like that book is not going to just stay there for Lithuania, who produced it, but it seems from this article that it'll go to the EU. So there we can see the situation. Russia is moving in a terrifying manner. And most of those things, I've been highlighting the dates, showing you that they've been moving in the last couple of weeks. Now, come aside to another point for a minute. Europe is in financial troubles. This man, you might have heard of him before, Professor Rubino. He's the Professor of Economics in the New York University. But in 2008 he predicted the collapse and he became called Dr. Doom. He's ultra famous for his accuracy. And he's talking about Europe facing deflation, unemployment on average there, in Spain 25%, youth unemployment 50%. He's saying, look, Europe's in a huge mess. It's facing economic depression. So they're ill prepared. They haven't really got the means to go to war, to defend themselves. They're in a mess within because of their economic situation. So the leaders are getting the point. And this comes from a prominent paper, the Washington Post. And it reports, it's a lot longer article, I've traced it as best I could. Hungarian Prime Minister said, Putin is a political model to emulate. They're saying placatory things about Russia and about the Russian leadership. Slovakia says much the same. NATO troops, he said, in our country, just like the Soviets. Ah, so the Soviets are just like Americans, not much different. Nice friendly guys. Czech Republic, similar comparison. Serbia invited Putin to the Red Army's liberation of Belgrade. Poland was concerned about its isolation and such like. So a big chunk of NATO alliance has quietly begun to lean towards Moscow, calming Putin down, saying nice things about him, to get things ready in case they get occupied. I think we can understand why they're doing it. Shocking though it may be. But it's even more dramatic than that. An election took place only a few days ago. Greece. Germans in shock as new Greek Prime Minister starts with a bang. What did he do? He first of all visited the Russians. It wasn't about the EU, the Russians. And he got a letter from Mr. Putin congratulating him. And he says, well, after all, we're the same religion. We're very muchly the same. So they've raised questions about whether the bloc's fragile consensus towards Moscow can hold. So they're saying, look, we're starting to break up. We're not really opposing Russia as we should be. Let's move on with Greece for a minute. Russia links loom large as Greece seeks debt relief. Athens' resistance on the new EU sanctions. They don't want EU, they're looking to Russia. And the new Greek government didn't agree with an EU leadership's resolution blaming Russia for the latest escalation in Ukraine. No, they're not at fault doing Ukraine. That's what the new leadership in Greece is saying. They're not at fault. For sanctions against Moscow, the EU needs 100% vote. That's the terms. 28 countries, they've got to have 28 agreeing. And this man, he agreed for the first time. But they don't think he will continue. So its opposition to Russia will break down the minute he gets serious. But it's not just there, it's spreading like wildfire. Here's Spain. What's happening there? Europe shakes as Greece spreads Red Spring, communist thinking. The newly elected leftist Prime Minister of Greece will be setting off to Cyprus, Italy and France. And what's he expect? He will hold talks with the Italian leader, his counterpart, the French president, and he's trying to say, let's not go the way the EU goes. So things are moving dramatically. Dramatically. What they are saying that his effect could collapse the economic structure of the EU. And he said that, I think, today. And it might have been the Australian that had it in it. All right? So things are moving dramatically. Hungarians protest against the premiers dealing with Putin. There's the Premier of Hungary, but he's not really friendly with her. He's linked with Russia. His name is Orbán. Orbán's dealing with Moscow includes an agreement with Russia to build new Hungarian nuclear power and a loan of billions of dollars or euro. So look at Europe. It's going exactly the way we would expect. It's starting to get fractious. It's getting terrified. It's beginning to break up in the face of all of this pressure. And they're preparing for Russian occupation. But, brethren and sisters, the Son of Man shall set his face towards, Son of Man, set your face towards Gog, of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech and Tubal. And look what it says, a proud and exalted leader. Same in Ezekiel, Daniel chapter 8. By treachery and craft, deceit, he'll destroy many. And that is his aim. They are a proud man, always going around showing his chest and his might and his strength. And Western journalism says his aim is to establish the Third Holy Roman Empire. Exactly what we would expect from Scripture. And what's he doing now? Sydney Morning Herald, Putin's Russia will become a besieged fortress as it moves towards a dictatorship. That's exactly what it's doing. Putin's regime is on the verge of transition from mild authoritarianism to outright dictatorship. And look at the date this year. Crack down on all signs of popular dissent are taking place. He's got men on the street moving around. He's arming them. They're not soldiers, they're in mufti, so to speak. And their aim is, you step out of line and they will act. And so, for the time being, he's quite popular. But he's preparing in case it doesn't happen. And of course he's aiming to get control of Europe by cunning trickery. I did this once before with you, I think, but there's the 11th humanitarian aid moving in. Remember, Troy fell, the Trojan horse, when they put this horse outside the walls. And the army retreated. They had soldiers inside. They didn't know. They pulled it inside the building, and overnight, or inside the city overnight, these fellas came out and took control of the city of Troy. Opened the gates, next thing it fell. And the papers are saying the same again. They've even got Mr. Putin sitting on the horse as if he's going to ride it to the gates to show his treachery. And things are moving. Now it's expanded dramatically from what I showed you before. It's moving right in, and the fighting is going on right through these areas. Peace talks aimed at halting rising bloodshed in the eastern Ukraine have ended in failure. Date? February the 1st, a few days ago. Going nowhere. And of course, I will put hooks, I will turn thee back, and put hooks in thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, says Yahweh. What's causing her to move? Well, her economy, collapsing. You know, somebody phoned me up, and I can't confirm these figures, but they said, look, they've got an article that shows how much Russia is going into debt every month. And then they were looking at the reserves Russia had. Now, I don't know if this all works, I'm not an expert in it, but when you divide the two in, their economy collapses by December this year. So you can see things are pretty grim. The price of oil is collapsing. 73% of its revenue came from oil this time last year. Not anymore. Oil's gone from about $1.10 a barrel to now down under $40 a barrel. Russia's economy's on the rocks. It's on the verge of recession. What's she going to do? What's she aiming to do? Russia's economy, the end of the line. For more than a decade, oil income and consumer spending have driven the economy. Not anymore. The Economist, the leading newspaper on finance. How long before the Russian economy collapses? It could get a lot worse, a lot sooner. And so they show to us it's moving swiftly towards a collapse situation. Well, is it going to cause them to back off? Brother Thomas didn't think so. Let the Russian treasury be as empty as it's said to be, and its expenditure exceeding its revenue by double the alleged deficit. Is it spending twice as much as what it says? He said it doesn't matter. It will only operate as a pressure from within, causing the autocrat, Mr. Putin at this stage, to enter into the countries and overflow and pass over. Why? To enrich himself with spoil. To go in and loot. To steal and rob from those countries. To remedy his economy. And the first country, Germany. And Germany, of course, as we know, has just in the recent time been going down faster than most in Europe. Its economy is shrinking. Now, these are old figures, but last year, but they still stand. Her economy is in real difficulty because her biggest trading partner is Russia. Biggest trading partner is Russia. So her general GDP has gone negative. Her exports gone negative. Her unemployment exploded. And then businessmen came to Mrs. Merkel and said, you keep doing this and this is what will happen. Gave her the figures. And it happened. Now there's 300,000, almost overnight, unemployed in Germany. Above what was already unemployed. And the companies, they're the biggest companies, these companies have invested over 1,000 billion in Russia. And they're liable to lose the lot if they continue to be angry with Russia and oppose it. How long can Germany continue what she's doing? Can't be long. Things are looking pretty critically there for her. And what about France? We've got to be different here because the Hebrew, we won't go into this, but Brother Thomas commenting on it says France will send her conquered and crestfallen troops to do battle for the autocrat against Britain. So he expects France not to capitulate. And indeed, every indication is that that's the way she's moving. So she's going to be there, Gomer and all her bands. But look, France has been building aircraft carriers and ships for Russia. And as things have gone bad, this one got sent into the water. 440 sailors came down to take it away and pay the money. France said, no way. Not until you're back out of Ukraine. Not until you're back out. Now they've finished another ship. Another one's completed. But they're not going to supply it to Russia. So she will anger Russia, no doubt. And it looks like in the end, remember what Brother Thomas says, it looks like in the end she might have to have a bit harder treatment than some of the others. Well, here's a key word. The key word in Ezekiel 38 is the word company. Company, company, company. And that is the verb from which the word company comes from. Hebrew word kahal. And what does it talk about? The religious assembly. The religious affiliation with the Gogin Confederacy. There is a religious backing behind it. And first of all, Putin, very religious. There's his co-leader, Mr. Kirill, the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church. The communists closed down churches right across Russia. Putin came into power and reversed that. 25,000 churches have been restored. 9 a month, 3 a day at one point. Amazing. Why? Because he wants the support of religion. Putin urges Russians to return to the values of religion. But also he's gone down and he's met with the papacy. And that alliance, I believe, will come to the fore when Russia takes control of Turkey. And that's not far away. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Putin, there he is, met the Pope Francis in a state visit, warming relationships between the Catholics and the Russian Orthodox. This will be the mother church, won't it? The mother of harlots. And the Orthodox will be a daughter church. But they will come and unite and will form an evil thought. And they will come against Israel. What's that evil thought? To destroy the Jews. And indeed, during the Gaza war, there was huge protests in Europe. Huge protests against Israel. It was so serious, brethren and sisters, it was so serious, a scale not seen since Hitler. They pursued Jews in the streets of Berlin as in 1938. 8 synagogues one night was attacked, put on fire. They're saved by the fire brigade, but the next Sabbath they needed 1,000 Jews to support the Jews coming, 1,000 soldiers to help the Jews come home in Berlin and in Paris safely. Really serious. But the consequences we know has been great. 26,000 new immigrants into Israel this last year. The highest figure for the last 10 years. 32% increase over any of those previous years. Out of Ukraine, as you can expect, up by 190%. Out of France, up by 206%. They can see the trouble coming. They know it. USA, just to give you a figure, 8%. And I don't know what the British increase was. Well, it looks like it might have shrunk a little, such a small figure, but there we go. Huge numbers came in. And next year, or this year, sorry, they expect France to increase by another 100% to at least 14,000. Mr. Netanyahu went over and he invited the Jews to return to Israel. He said, you're safer there, come there. But now, Daniel 11 says, once it gets control of Europe, and I think it's in that order, but it may not be, brethren and sisters. It may not be. The Bible magazine at the moment is coming out with quite a bit of evidence seeming to indicate that Russia is ready to do this, move on Turkey. The king of the north shall come against him, Turkey. Won't he? We know that. The king of the south pushed against him during World War I and pushed him back to Istanbul and to Turkey. That happened World War I. Now the king of the north shall come against him, Turkey, from the north, like a whirlwind with chariots, with horsemen and many ships. So what do we expect? Russia is already, Turkey already threatens closing the Bosporus and on Russian ships. Many ships up here in Crimea. Crimea is worthless. And they can't get their ships out of here. There it is, the Bosporus. Narrow, they can easily put guns across here. Could easily close that waterway. And the Prime Minister of Turkey said to Putin a wee while ago now, when they took Crimea, he said in Crimea there is ethnic Turks called Tatars. If you persecute them as you did last time you controlled Crimea, we'll close the Bosporus on you. There has been indication that Russia has been doing that already. But nothing has come from this chap at this stage. So what's going to happen? We know Russia must take Turkey. And this has been a dream they've had for a long time. There's the symbol of Turkey. There's the symbol of Turkey. There's the symbol of Turkey. The cross over this Muslim symbol. We will triumph over Turkey. We will triumph over Istanbul is a statement of many of the churches in Moscow and right across Russia. See the point? And so we're seeing newspapers coming out. Eurasian Daily Monitor says, Russian push to the south, net assessment of geopolitical developments in the Black Sea region since the start of 2014. And what do they say? They have set the stage for a new Russian drive south, all directly threatening Turkey. As I said, the Bible magazine, the last one, has got lots of information in Brother Don Pierce's article on the move toward Turkey. I think Brother Thomas seems to suggest that Russia will first take Eastern Europe, then Turkey, but it doesn't have to. And so, only a few days ago, something strange took place. Mr. Erdogan and Putin have not been getting on. They've had phone calls together when they've been rowing over the phone. They've not been happy. But then Mr. Putin came along and he said, we're not going to build a pipeline through here, the southern pipeline, the southern stream pipeline, through the Black Sea into Romania, which we were proposing to do, to bypass Ukraine. We will put a pipeline through here, part of it's already built, through Turkey. And Turkey shot down some time ago a Russian plane, missiles, has done all sorts of things anti-Russian. What's Mr. Putin got in mind? Why is it safe to put a pipeline through here into Greece and Turkey? And he's going ahead with it. My belief is he knows what we know, but not for the same reason. We know Russia will take Turkey, don't we? And he knows that probably before the pipeline's complete, he's got control of Turkey. He's got his timetable worked out. And so things are moving around Turkey. The back end of Turkey is Georgia. Remember, they've got control of those two states. Vladimir signed a strategic state partnership agreement with the breakaway state, moving money in there and soldiers and equipment. And they told the rest of Georgia, don't worry, that equipment's aimed at Turkey. Turkey. So what do we expect? Brother Thomas in Eureka said this, we, that's us brethren and sisters, don't have to wait the advance of the Russian goad against Constantinople. His expectation is that Christ is here before them. So look, let's just pause for a second, brethren and sisters. Look at the state of Europe. It may be that Russia's going to move in, get control of Europe first, and then move on Turkey. We aren't sure. There's a lot of evidence at the moment that Turkey is coming under threat too. And any minute one or the other could happen. Brother Thomas's words aren't inspired words, but he's been so accurate. How long have we got? Think of this year, 2015. Next year, 2016, 49 years from the Six-Day War. 70 years from the end of the Second World War. A generation, the full generation. How long have we got? We don't know. We don't know. But one thing's for sure, things are moving very dramatically, and we should be very serious about the things of the truth, brothers and sisters. We must all look at ourselves and say, how are we going? And so, let's now move on for a second. Let's look at the nations that oppose Russia. The merchants of Tarshish. Britain. Britain was very upset when this man, we saw him before, Mr. Juncker, that Jesuit, took control of and was dreaming to federalise Europe. And when that happened, Mr. Cameron went over and he really strongly said, this man is a scoundrel, he's a cheat, we do not want him. And the vote went through. 26-2. 26 for this chappie and 2 for what Mr. Cameron wanted. One other country supported him. And so Britain's ready to leave, it seems. And now there's elections just around the corner. I believe it's about 97 days, almost exactly, to that event, May the 7th. Here's the parties. Look at the size of the parties that rule Britain. Not much different, really, between them. What's the pivotal thing? Well, of course, these two are, of course, in alliance, and that's ruling the country. But where's it likely to go? There's a new party coming up. It's led by this man. Anybody know him? I bet you've seen pictures of him. He's a man who runs a party called the UKIP party, and it doesn't seem to have anything but one idea: get out of Europe. And it's exceedingly popular. Exceedingly popular. They've had 2 by-elections in Britain. There we are in those 2 places recently. And guess who won them? This new party. It looks like the party that's going to rule Britain is going to have to be in alliance with him. And he's got one issue: get out of Europe. Get out of Europe. So it does look very, very likely political moves will take place in the very near future. Now, Cameron's speech. Is Britain supporting Israel? Before the Gaza war, he flew over there and said, our links with you are unbreakable. Now, time's really gone, so let's move on quickly. What about the Commonwealth countries? The merchants of Tarshish with all the lions thereof. Commonwealth countries. Let's have a think of a few of them. What's this man? The leader of Spain, Canada, Prime Minister, Mr. Harper, great friend of Israel. My word, and they know it. I got it all laid out for him. The red carpet. They knew what he would say. The wings were full of people listening to his wonderful speech of pro-Israeli words when he visited there last year. And of course, you know this man, I don't know how long he's going to last. But anyhow, his election speech, he said, we are firmly committed to restoring Australian-Israeli friendship. And that has indeed happened. And the biggest election, probably victory ever seen in the world as far as numbers were concerned, was with the victory of India. There's the leader of India, Mr. Modi. And Mr. Modi was approached with the close of the election. They said, look, we're really behind China. We've got to fix it up. How can we get the economy of India catching up with China? He said, look, there'll be no troubles, no troubles. They said, what are you going to do? He says, I'll invite the Jews over to give us guidance on how to run this country. You know, the industry. They're very good at it. How true. How true. So the paper then came out. India's next Prime Minister touted as Israel's best friend in Southeast Asia. There it is. And he's very much friendly with this man. Prime Minister of Israel. The India-Israeli defence relationship, Netanyahu says, the sky's the limit. We'll give them every help they want. We'll be united together. So we see Commonwealth countries standing together. Well, now let's bring to the last point. Beat your swords, your ploughshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. The world has got to then arm. And the papers are saying arming, but who's doing it? Oh yes, those countries in Europe are trying frantically to buy weapons, bring soldiers home, but it's too late. But somebody else is moving, using what money they've got within the country, not foreign reserves. They're talking about Russia. Increased annual spending on nuclear weapons by 50%. Budget provides for a 60% increase in national spending next year. And here we see military intelligence last year about Russia. About Russia. They know which way things are going to move. If they can intimidate the rest of the world, they'll get their way. So you can see, brothers and sisters, things are moving dramatically. Time is super short. Well, let's close by going to the words we started with. But at the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. You go outside our walls and go and talk to other people about what's going on worldwide, they won't hardly know about it. It's going to come like a sudden jolt. It's going to be like a thief. You know, when a thief robs a house, they don't phone up and say, we're coming, without warning. But look at what we're seeing. We don't know if it's going to come right now, but by gum, it looks it. Remember, like the birth pangs of a mother with a child, and it's come on and off, on and off, on and off, hasn't it? And look at it now. We've got to ask ourselves, is this the final stage? And what are they saying? They've been saying peace and safety. Look how Europe's defended itself over the last 25 years. The weapons it's accumulated, backed by, take Sweden, by 70%, 80% and such like. They've been deceived. Let us not be deceived, brethren and sisters. Because when they feel that, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. And it looks like over the last month we're getting the signs of it on the way. But brethren and sisters, let us go on. Let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love and the hope of salvation. Brothers and sisters, think about it. The time appears to be very short. It fits exactly what we've thought about. It's what brethren have been saying for years and years. Brother Thomas, Robert Roberts, Isla Collier. We're seeing it moving. And the signs seem to be fitting it, and the times seem to be matching it. We can't be certain, but it looks highly like it. So therefore, what does it mean? Well, what it is we should not go to sleep on this information. If I'm wrong, so what? But if I'm right, my goodness, what a wonderful thing if we are people who watch. Watching not necessarily only outside, but watching ourselves, seeing how we're walking. And we're sober about these matters, serious. Putting on the qualities that Christ wants of us: faith, hope and love. Brethren and sisters, the time's almost here. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared. And indeed, the day is almost here. Let us pray that it might be here, brethren and sisters. I'm sure each and every one of you would love it. I would love it. But therefore, let us be people who are serious about our prayers, serious about our reading of the Bible, our study of God's Word, and our walk in the truth. Thank you.